Welcome to Mind Power Meets Mystic. It is another fun episode of this lovely weekly mission that Cinthia Varkevisser and I have embarked on. My name is Michelle Walters. I'm the Mind Power part of the equation, and Cinthia is our show mystic. We are delighted today to have a new guest. Todd Payne is a relationship coach with over 25 years of experience, specializing in self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and the Enneagram. His unconventional journey from ministry to coaching has given him unique insights into human behavior, which he uses to help individuals and couples achieve lasting transformation. After a life-changing sabbatical and a devastating wildfire, Todd relocated from the United States to Portugal, where he now thrives as an emotional intelligence coach. Today, he continues to guide clients toward profound personal and relational growth, drawing on his extensive experience and deep commitment to helping others. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here. And, the Enneagram is a thing that kind of splits the difference between mind and mystic. So it's delightful to be a part of this conversation with you guys.
Well, how can we not say tell us more about that?
So my area of expertise is the Enneagram. It's a system of personality, and I use it to help individuals and couples understand themselves and one another better, communicate better, and relate better. But the Enneagram itself is kind of lost to the annals of history where it began, no less than 2,500 years ago. And it's been handed through spiritual traditions like Sufism and Kabbalah until it made its way into Western civilization in the 20th century, really. But in the last 50 years or so, it's become increasingly used in psychology and group dynamic work, organizational work. So it's kind of found its way into a mainstream mind kind of consciousness, but it has its roots very, very deeply rooted in mysticism and in what it means to be a human being.
I love it. I think that's so totally cool. I guess in
Me
my
too.
mind, yeah, in my mind, and I think Cynthia's too, like what's in your mind is a way of sort of connecting with yourself, connecting with other people, connecting with something you can't see, something higher maybe. It's also very, very cool. I remember, I think I first learned about the Enneagram in maybe the 80s or the 90s.
I was
I don't know
Mhm.
where I ran across it. I may have run across it when I worked for a company and they had us going through Seven of Habits and like all
Mhm.
Myers-Briggs and all that
Right,
kind of stuff. I think they pulled out the
right.
Enneagram at some point too. And I quickly read it and I was like, "Bah, I know which one of these I am. I'm that one." What about you, Cynthia? Where did you first hear about the Enneagram? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was in the throes of my woo-woo work, and we were going through psychometry and
Mhm.
mediumship and all these other things. And of course, as you gather, there are always others in mysticism that will come, and Enneagram came as well. Now, unlike you, I thought I was something else, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm not what I thought I was. Which unfortunately I don't remember what it is, but I was pretty upset. And then because I'm so opinionated, I was like, piece of crap. And even though I know crap, and I came upon it again because I was working in handwriting analysis, doing graphology, and I was wanting they were doing great work in corporations with handwriting analysis. I was trying to get it here in the United States as popular, but I couldn't get past Myers-Briggs. I think was really huge at that time, as well as
Mm.
the Enneagram. So I lost out.
Well, and it has its roots in the American schools of Enneagram in Berkeley, California in the 1970s is really where it landed and took roots. So I think there's a lot of it still, in the Bay Area. Um, But the thing that makes the Enneagram different than say like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Big Five is that the question the Enneagram is asking is about the story that we tell ourselves. You know, all day long we have a running narrative in our minds about who we are and what we're supposed to do and what's right and what's wrong and this kind of self-talk. And unlike maybe the Myers-Briggs or whatever, where they're kind of maybe looking at behaviors or predilections, two people may have the same behavior for wildly different motivations. motivations. And the Enneagram is really about getting at those motivations, those fears, hopes, desires, the secret story. In fact, I found my type when I was reading an Enneagram book, because I was reading a paragraph and I thought to myself, literally, I have never told anyone on this planet that I think these things or feel these things. I thought this was just something I kept to myself. And here it is, just in a book. And that's how I knew. I was like, okay, this is not only legitimate, but this is my type. So it was
So
really
Todd, why don't you
eye-opening.
give us the whirlwind version of the
Sure.
various types from the Enneagram?
Ooh, okay, let's see. We'll do this as quick as we can.
I mean, just
For
for
start,
those of people who have no idea what we're talking about.
of
So,
course, of course. The first thing to know is just sort of the general structure. In the world of the Enneagram, we talk about human beings as having three separate and distinct and essential kinds of intelligence. Everybody has them. The first is what we might call head center intelligence, and that's what you would think of: pattern recognition, cause and effect, anticipation, strategizing. But the human brain doesn't really come online until we're about 25 years old, right? Avis won't rent you a car until you're capable of risk assessment. And that's how long it takes the brain to fully be at that level of that kind of intelligence for prediction. The brain is about keeping us safe. We predict in order to avoid threat, to have resource. But what do we do in the first 25 years of life? Well, we're born with a different kind of intelligence. We call it heart center intelligence. And the domain of the heart center is relationships, feelings, identity. It's impossible to answer the question, who am I, in any way other than relational. I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I'm a coach, but those all have to do with relationships. And indeed, we have this intelligence that is seated in our hearts that is just as important as the head center intelligence, but it values different things. Where the head center is thinking about safety and security, the heart center is thinking about love and affection and attention and connection. We also have a third intelligence. It's in our guts. And remarkably, in the last 25 years, there's been a whole branch of psychiatry and psychology that's developing around the second gut, right? That's in, our intestines, where serotonin and gabapentin and neuroepinephrine and all these things are produced. So we have this visceral intelligence in our bodies. And where the head center is worried about the future, and the heart center is thinking about the past. What did I say? Did people like me? The body center is rooted right in the present moment only. And it is about getting our physical needs met. It is about boundaries. It is about the environment around us and things being as they should be, right and just and good. So all three of these intelligences are essential. All three of these intelligences are valid. But as any adult will tell you, at times we are at war within ourselves. My brain says one thing, my heart says another. My gut tells me something, and my brain says something different. And the way the Enneagram understands the 9 types that are found in the Enneagram is the different relationships between those intelligence centers, or the balance between them. And the way I like to think about it is bowls of porridge, like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. We all have a bowl of porridge that's too hot. We all have a bowl of porridge that's too cold. We all have a bowl of porridge that's about right. And for me, for example, I'm a type 5. That's a head center type. So I overuse my head center. Means I have a lot of head center gifts, but I have the drawbacks of the head center because I use it too much, and that includes fear and anxiety. My wife is a type 2, so that's a heart center type. We don't always see the same things. We don't always perceive the world in the same ways, or approach problem solving in the same ways, but it's just as valid. It's just that she overuses her heart center and has the problems such as shame and guilt that come with the heart center. I'm like, shame? What's shame? I don't know. Shame. Which center we depend on most kind of gives us a sense of, and which center we use the least, gives us these what I call recipes for the 9 types. So that's a quick sketch of the system itself, and I'll stop there before I get too long-winded.
no, I
and
just
see
absolutely
how
love
this is
that.
landing for
I
you.
love that. And it makes perfect sense to me. I haven't heard about the Enneagram described in these centers way. So that's really quite interesting and quite cool. And as Cynthia and I have some programs where we help people connect to their heart, connect to their head, because we understand, and maybe we need to add in gut, Cynthia. Like that's a thought. But no, that's
Why not? Sounds
too much
good.
for an afternoon. But it makes complete sense to me. And it's an interesting framework for thinking about it. Do you want to
So
go into then there's 7, right? Are there 7 types?
9. There's
Nine
nine.
types.
Yeah, three head center types, three heart center types, three body center types. And let me do, yeah, a quick spin around the wheel. And the way I will talk about them briefly is by maybe their greatest gift, what they look like when they're their healthiest, because each type brings something to the human community that the other types can't. But also the shadow side, we often identify the types by their need because ultimately we are driven by sort of a core need. Frequently, we're not even aware of it. It's so primal or primeval. So we'll start at two and work our way around to one. I know that's a little odd, but it'll make sense because two, three, and four are the heart-centered types. Type two is called sometimes the helper. They are really intuitive about what other people are feeling. They're deeply empathic people and driven to solve problems, connect with people, make the world a better place. The downside for type two is that what we call the need to be needed.
Mhm.
They seem like they're helping and altruistic, but what they're really getting in return is appreciation, which is a form of love. It's a form of attention. And so they need to be loved. And so they want to serve and help other people in order to feel that love. And so the type twos often struggle with boundaries and self-care. As my wife is a type two, sometimes they end up with chronic illnesses because they push themselves so hard. That gives you an idea of how this system kind of works. Three is a heart center type. Love, we measure as babies, we learn to measure love in the form of attention. If mom is looking at me, singing to me, holding me, feeding me, that's how I know that she loves me. Threes also want attention. They want love. That's what the heart center wants, but they seek it in the form of admiration. So threes are driven to succeed. They can be successful actors or politicians or salespeople or whatever the case may be. Whatever the community whose love they want says is success, that's what they will be driven to do, which means that threes are often out of touch with themselves. They can be inauthentic. They can be vain. They can be who they need to be in a chameleon-like way, but they lose their own sense of self. Type four is also a heart center type. The attention they seek, though, is in the form of connection. They tend to be intense. They feel things deeply. A lot of our fours become artists. They're very expressive. In fact, they can give voice through poetry, through song, through art to the human experience in deep ways that the rest of us sometimes don't even would never think to feel in those ways. Problem for fours, they can get caught in those emotional torrents. And for those of us who know and love fours, we can get sucked into their drama and their emotion as well. So no type is without a shadow side. Once my mom took my class and when I got to my type, which is five, she said, "I'm so sorry. If I had known, I'd have parented you differently." I said, "Mom, if you'd parented me differently, I'd be a different number. Nobody gets off the wheel." So,
I have a
so
favor to ask
that's,
you, Todd. I'm
yeah.
sorry, because I know they all have names, and purely selfish reasons. I figure as you go through, I'll remember the one that I was trying to reject.
I'm actually going to push back on that, Cynthia, because names carry baggage.
That's true.
And I prefer the numbers because
Right.
one of the things I love to say about the Enneagram is that all personality characteristics in the Enneagram are value neutral. They serve us, they hinder us, and our job is to learn how to apply them appropriately. And so I don't want to give it a name because I don't want somebody to think, well, I don't want to be that kind. I don't want to be a helper,
Right.
or
That's what
or I
happened.
do want to be a helper, whatever the case, wherever the
That's
baggage
exactly
may
what she's
take you.
talking
That's
about. Yeah.
exactly what happened to me. And it's really funny because I'm like, I think I was that one, but I never really got past the title, right?
So
Okay, so
I
this is your
I
expert
I
lesson,
stick with
Oh
Cynthia.
yeah. So
numbers.
I concede. I agree with you and carry on. I'm so sorry.
Nope,
No,
that was
no,
a
your
good
question is
question,
a
a good
perfect
break.
one and one that a lot of people ask because it's harder to use the numbers. But one of the things I do in my work is I invite people into the gray area. I invite people into hard work. So I'm not going to make it easy on you. Let's move on to the head center types, five, six, and seven. The heart center wants to be loved. So that's the question driving twos, threes, and fours. The head center wants to be safe. So that's the thing that's driving five, six, and seven. Fives believe that their safety comes from knowing. If I understand it, if I know it, if I can wrap my head around it, I can protect myself from it. That happens to be my type. So when I discovered the Enneagram, guess what I did? I started reading every book possible. I think I got up to 47 or 48 Enneagram books before my wife finally said, "What's the 49th one gonna say that the first 48 didn't say? Please stop buying Enneagram books." But somehow that's what makes me feel safe, is to know. The problem for fives is that we often struggle with social connection. And certainly I did as a young man, because we live in our heads and we live in a world that's facts and black and white and data, and people are messy and they're not consistent. And so fives, we kind of go, oh, people are, they're not knowable, and we're only interested in what's knowable. So fives often suffer from social problems. Sixes are wonderful team players. Their great gift is thinking about all the ways a thing might turn out. Now, when you have anxiety or fear, which is the underlying feeling of the head center, the underlying feeling of the heart center is shame, negative feeling. When you have fear, then when you think about all the ways a thing could turn out, you end up being a worst case scenario person. And that's can be the trouble for sixes. They have a great imagination. They think outside the box. They are very prepared people. They spend a lot of their physical energy making, I hate to carry the suitcase of a six, because it's going to have a raincoat and a pair of shorts and extra prescriptions. And it's going to have shoes for this and shoes for that and an evening gown and pajamas. It's like they prepare for everything. So wonderful team players, wonderful people to help you think beyond ways we normally think, but at the same time, they can get caught in their head, buyer's remorse, that kind of thing. Sevens are kind of the party people on the Enneagram. They have a real joie de vivre, a zest for life, because they're fear-driven. Their head-centeredness is about possibility and discovering what's new and what's next. And so sevens are never satisfied, and so they're driven and they're interesting and they're fun. But the downside is that sometimes they miss out on the deeper things in life, because a lot lay on the other side of struggle. A lot lay on the other side of hard work. And for many sevens, when something becomes difficult or unpleasant, they simply cast it to the side and go on to the next thing. And they have serial relationships or serial careers. So as much fun as sevens can be, sometimes they feel like they're missing out, and we can feel like it's tough to connect with them. So that's the head center types, 5, 6, and 7. 8, 9, and 1 are the body center types. And the thing to know about the body center is that it has a visceral sense of what I call how things should be, a sort of right and wrong. And sometimes it can be translated into justice. That becomes a cause for a lot of body center types. 8s are bulls in china shops. Their belief is that if something isn't right, then it's incumbent upon them to make it right. And they change the world, and they run over people doing it. So they're amazing human beings. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we believe, was probably an 8. He took his sense that things are not the way they should be, and he changed the world for it. And but to hear his personal life, he also had, ran over people, and that was part of the way that it went. So it's, every type cuts both ways. Every personality characteristic is sort of value neutral in that regard. 9s are just the opposite of 8s, where 8s say their job is to change what's around them to make it right. 9s feel like they have to change what's inside them to match and make it right and reach an equilibrium. Sometimes 9 is called the peacemaker, because they can be, their energy is an energy of reconciliation. They have an amazing gift to see both sides of every story. They see why people feel the way they do, why people think the way they do. But the problem then, when you see every side of the story, is it becomes very difficult to act. And 9s really struggle with action. They can be procrastinators and sort of sloth. Sometimes we associate with 9, because they're afraid of rocking the boat, of ruffling feathers, of being a burden. And then that brings us to 1. 1 is we call them, I call them, they have a striving energy to them. 1s feel like they want to be exemplary, good little boys and good little girls, and they if they get a 97 on a test, their feeling is, what did I get wrong that I didn't get 100? These are people we want in quality assurance, right? These are people we want inspecting our cars and our elevators. But at the same time, it could be very difficult in relationships because they are as demanding of other people about meeting the standard as they are ourselves. My mother was a one, and I recall there's a correct way to empty the dishwasher. If you empty the top rack before you empty the bottom rack, then the water that is on the coffee mugs will spill onto the plates below, and then the plates will be spotted. So you have to empty the bottom rack before you empty the top rack. This is quite difficult. I say I grew up in a museum at times because that's sort of how ones organize their lives. So again, all nine types, wonderful people, tremendous gifts that they bring to the world. But our gifts end up also being that which holds us back because we kind of have one tool in our tool belt. And when it works great. And when it is the wrong setting, it doesn't serve us at all. So I'll just let me end with a quick story to illustrate that. My wife came home from work one day and said, I had a terrible day at work. My boss yelled at me. If I was a heart-centered person, I would have responded, can I give you a hug? Let's talk about it. Let me pour you wine. What went on? As a head-centered person, though, my initial response right out of the gate was, did you file a report with HR? Right. Like such a systems and problems and data and she was like, that is not what I need right now is an admonition to file a report with HR. So it's about learning, it's about bringing all three bowls of porridge to the same temperature. It's about not reacting from your strong one if it's not the right one, knowing how to rein that in. It's about the cold one, heating that up so you have that and access to it and use it in the right times and places. Because the head has right times and places. The heart has right times and places. The body has right times and places. And Enneagram work is about being in touch with all of those and learning to apply them in ways that are, that serve
Okay.
you and serve your
Okay.
relationships.
So I have a question now. And my
Yeah.
question is for Cinthia.
Okay.
Cinthia, now that you've heard all these descriptions, do you remember which one or ones you thought you might be?
I was hoping to be a four, but I think I was more of a brainy kid and a head focused kid, which was really interesting to me. So I'm very curious too.
Do you feel like it's that one? Because I remember from thinking which one I was years and years ago, and it's interesting to hear Todd's description, but I think I'm going to stick with the same one I picked before.
Really? Which one are you?
Party people.
Yeah.
Life is too short to suffer. That's how
Life is
sevens think.
very short.
Right.
And I I remember the word I saw associated with number 7 was adventurer, and I
Yeah,
just felt
yeah.
like that was me. Like
Sometimes Epicurean, sometimes discovery. Yeah.
discovery, like always looking for something new. Kind of learning and I mean, I take adventures. Now, that's
When
not to
the
say that I don't see some of these other aspects in me too, right?
Sure.
As you're going through this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of me. But there's a part of me that's a helper, and there's a part of me that's about achieving. Um,
Mhm.
there's definitely a part of me that's about sort of the knowing, because like I write books and that kind of a thing. Um,
It should be said that because we all have all three types of intelligence, we actually do touch on three of the different types. So, for example, I say I'm a five, I'm head center first, I'm a five. But when I am in my need as a human being to connect, I have to go into my heart center. I have to operate as a two or a three or a four. I happen to operate as a four when I'm in my heart space. When I'm in my body space, when I have to get the world organized, when I have to work for what's right, I happen to work in a one way. So we talk about what's called a tri type, and I am a 5-4-1. But that's quite complicated. And normally when I
yeah, we
work
don't
with
need to
people,
go into that, but
it's enough
it
to
makes
just work
it
with
makes
the
sense.
first one.
So, Todd, tell us a little bit about how you use this work first with an individual and then with a couple.
Sure. That's a great question. And really, the pattern is the same. And that is that unless we are aware of our patterns, we are bound to repeat them. So the first gift of the Enneagram is just to give us an awareness of our patterns, an awareness of that self-talk. and we learn to identify it. I always start in the body. As I said, the head is thinking about tomorrow, the heart is thinking about yesterday, but the body, you don't have to pee tomorrow and you're not hungry yesterday. The body is here in this moment. And so when we tune into our body, and I use a lot of vagal nerve stuff about becoming in tune with what we're sensing and what we're feeling in a visceral way, then we get much faster feedback. So if you were a one, for example, ones feel a lot of resentment because things aren't the way they should be. So I'll ask ones, are you clenching your jaw? Are you clenching your fists? Are you holding your breath? Like, let's let your body tell you when resentment is building up. Because if by the time it gets to your conscious mind, you're already locked in the pattern. You've already said something dumb. You've pissed someone off. You've entered into that space that we're trying to learn how to not be in. So awareness is the first thing. When I work with couples, a tremendous thing happens. It's probably my favorite moment of working with couples, honestly. When first I share your type with you and I gain some authority for the system. You go, wow, you really get me. You really understand me. Then I share your partner's type with you. And there's this natural blooming of empathy that happens when we see the cage our partner is trapped in, when we understand why they always respond the way they do, why they always perceive things the way they do. All of a sudden, it's not personal. It's not about me, and you're trying to beat me or overcome me. Instead, it's about your experience, and that empathy creates what I like to call a sort of a neutral ground that we can now talk about you, we can talk about me, we can talk about us. And my wife isn't saying, Todd, I hate it when you. She says, boy, I'm seeing some five patterns rear their head up. Is that what's happening? And we could talk about fives. And I have the psychological distance and emotion that I don't feel hurt and insulted. I can engage it. She has language to talk about it. So it creates empathy and it creates a space for conversation about what's happening. So between awareness and intentional approach to what you've discovered, and then the fostering of empathy, the transformation. At that point, I just sort of guide the process. I don't even have to be a driving force behind it because it catches momentum, it catches gravity, and it pulls people in. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
I also love working with couples and families because one is just like you say that with the blooming, I like to call it as a shift where all of a sudden there's not such a chasm between the two, but they can
Yeah,
see each other in certain ways. The
right.
difference in the question that's coming up is when I approach each person, what I always say to them is I change for you, I'll change the words, but not the message. And so what I was wondering is as you're approaching each person, do you use the different language, the one that calls to them, so that the other person starts creating a library of what
Wow.
or how they can, or how
What an
they can approach
insightful
people?
question, Cinthia. That is a brilliant question.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. The metaphor I like to use is keys in music. So
Ah,
I will play in the key of five, or
yep.
I will play in the key of nine so that the nine can hear me. And I will tell them their partner is a four. And I will play the song of four in the key of nine. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, the nine can understand what the four is dealing with. And I can then teach the nine to also play in the key of four. I speak to my wife in heart-centered ways because I know that is what she hears. She came to me. I remember a time we were parenting, we had little kids. She has a degree in human development. I wouldn't listen to her about parenting. But when she said, I read an interesting article in Psychology Today, I said, ooh, Psychology Today. So she sent me the article, I read the article, and lo and behold, I changed my parenting. So she understood that I needed data. I needed to approach it in a systematic way in order for it to compute. She played in the key of five so that we could have that conversation and change our approach as parents.
That is absolutely beautiful. I love it.
I do too. That's what a great way of saying that. I may have to steal that. I hope you don't mind.
Please do. Let's make the world a better place together, huh?
Exactly, exactly. I'm so curious because as a minister, you're already a great communicator. You must, otherwise you wouldn't, right? You would be able to do your job. So there
Well,
are
you should ask about that. I think you're
such
making an assumption.
So I would love to hear, obviously something grew out of something else. So I would love to hear the radical shift that was in your bio, I think it was,
Yeah,
of
sure.
what happened and how it came. And then if you were to go back to be a minister, because I do believe in a way you are, right? It's just in a different way. It's not church, but you
Right.
are, right? You are
Yeah,
administering. Um, yeah, so please tell me more about that and how it shifted you and now look
sure.
back.
Let me give you sort of three high points. Um, I did not grow up in the church at all, in any religious way whatsoever. I went to church one day as a 19-year-old because I was dating a girl who wanted to go to church, and boys go where the girl wants to go. While I was there, I had what can only be described as a religious experience. That is what ultimately drew me then onto seminary and to the ministry. However, after 5 years and $50,000 in student debt, the committee that oversees who's allowed to become ordained and who is not said to me, "We don't think that you can do it." My year-long internship supervisor filled out my appraisal at the end, my evaluation, with the words, I quote, "Todd has none of the essential gifts and skills for ministry." So my entry into the ministry was not because I was good at it. I like to say if you're struggling in math, don't go to the kid who aced the math class without studying. Go to the kid who failed last year and this year is passing because they're the one who can actually tell you how to solve the problems. That's me with people. I was terrible with people. My father, when I told him I was going to be a minister, my dad said, "You can't be a minister. You're terrible with people." So it took me 10 years, 12 years of being a minister poorly to gather enough information and data to begin to change the way that I understood, which brings us to our third point, right? So I had the religious experience. I was told no. When I finally was ordained and then spent 15 years doing it, I got a sabbatical. My bishop said, "What are you going to do to improve yourself on the sabbatical? This isn't a vacation." And I said, "I don't know." He said, "I think you should study the Enneagram." And that's how I came to learn it. And when I studied it, everything I had learned about people, all of a sudden I had a framework to hang it on. I had a system to codify it. And that was the point where all of those experiences, all of that hard fought learning for what people are like and how to interact with them, I was able to put it into a form that was then teachable. And so now my goal is the best thing about hitting your head against the wall is how good it feels when you stop. And that's really my mission, is to help people stop banging their head against the wall by teaching them another way. And that's what the Enneagram offered for me.
I love it. Todd, you have been so educational and funny and curiosity. I think Cynthia and I are left with so many questions. Some will get answered and some will get answered in the future, I
We'll do
guess.
a part two. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, maybe so. But it's time for us to look at wrapping this episode up. What would you like to share with our listeners? Do you have an event or a resource or something that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, the thing I would love to leave with your listeners more than anything is hope, because I think that the most powerful emotion that we can experience is hope. And I want to tell people that if you are stuck in patterns, personal patterns, relational patterns, if you're unhappy, it doesn't have to be that way. There is hope that we can look at things differently, we can approach things differently. There are tools for changing the way that we show up in our lives. So if they want to get in touch with me, I would love to hear their story. I am always learning, and my company is called Konnectfully. And we live in a world where you can spell anything the way you want. So it's spelled with a K. Konnectfully.com. You can reach me there. I'm Todd at Konnectfully. Just reach out to me, and let's begin the conversation, because hope is real and I can give you some scaffolding to begin that transformation. And that's really, you talked about me still being a minister. I don't like to think about it in those terms. That is a heavy word, right? It's a laden word. But I do still feel a mission to bring, all of this into the world so that others can be happier with themselves and with their relationships.
I
Thank you,
agree with you.
Todd.
I agree with you. So I apologize, but you know what I meant.
Not at all. Not I absolutely know what you mean. And you're right. You're right.
Okay. All
All
right.
right. And that wraps this episode of Mind Power Meets Mystic. Please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, whatever it is. We would really, really appreciate it. Thanks. And we'll see you next time.